Welcome, everyone. I'm excited that you're joining us for another Job Tread Live webinar today. We're going to be talking about everything cash flow. So, hopefully we can give you some tips and tricks, strategies to improve your cash flow. Super important. So we're excited to have you here for today. We've also got, as usual, be sure to explore all of our webinars. We've got all of our past webinars that have been recorded, as well as all the upcoming ones. They're all available on our website at www.jobtrade.com/webinars. So we'd love for you to check those out. You can also watch them on our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe there. If you have any ideas for future topics, we'd also love to hear that as well. It just helps us make sure that we're providing the most useful and valuable content for you to continue growing and improving your business. So with that, I'll just dive on into to our discussion here about cash flow. So why am I doing this presentation? It's like, to me, this is the number one most important thing that we could talk about, because cash flow is the number one reason that construction, and really all small businesses, like across industries, like this is the number one reason why businesses fail. It's just not managing your cash flow. It's not understanding your cash flow and how it ties into your business operations. So, I thought it would, be helpful for us to kind of just do a little bit of a deep dive into it. Obviously, not everyone needs to be an expert on, cash flow and all the accounting statements and everything like that. But I will say from my, previous experiences, my undergraduate was in finance and accounting. I did, run other successful businesses before this. I've also done investment banking. So I do have a very in-depth understanding of, the financials and how they all link together. And, the thing that I took away from all of those experiences is that your cash flow is the most important thing to understand and to manage for your business. And it really nicely kind of pulls everything together. So I just wanted to, kind of highlight that. And so, what is cash flow? It's an accounting, financial statement. You've got your cash flow statement, but, in more broad terms, it's the amount of cash that moves in and out of your business during a specific period of time. So it's a key measure for your company's financial health. And it's reflecting your ability to collect from your customers and then paying out your expenses. And, again, it just kind of helps you understand at any given moment, where you're at and what your ability is to, make payments and to continue funding, both your operations, your overhead, your payroll, as well as, being able to purchase materials and do the things that you need to do to grow your business. So it's super important. So, positive cash flow is, when more money's coming into the business rather than going out, and then negative cash flows when more money's going out of the business than coming in. And so, obviously, hopefully you've got, some cash, some money in the bank, so that if you are having negative cash flow, it's not going to, totally put you underwater. But, if that ever does occur, you always want to make sure that you can do whatever you can to get back to a positive cash flow situation, so that, again, you're bringing in more, you're stacking your cash instead of, basically having your cash fly out and not being able to keep it replenished. That can just get you into a lot of trouble. So those are kind of just some high level terms there. If you hear me mention them, that's kind of what we're looking at. So, when I kind of thought back and we reflected on, what are the most common cash flow issues, I'd say, kind of not collecting on your accounts receivable, is the number one thing that can get you into big trouble. Like when I took over the general contracting firm before I started Job Tread, I went in and they had almost $800,000 in accounts receivable. And, and instead of focusing on collecting that AR, they continued to borrow money. And, ultimately that got them into a lot of trouble because, all that AR, all of those invoices that, we sent, we never followed up with, and we never collected on. Every single day that goes by, your chance of collecting that money is dwindling. And we ended up having to write off hundreds of thousands of dollars of hard-earned money that we just didn't follow up on and collect. And so it's so important that you're collecting your AR. And that is the number one thing you can do to achieve that positive cash flow, is make sure that you're getting paid on time every time. So, also leading into that, not invoicing on time, not collecting deposits up front, and collecting those progress payments away can also very quickly get you into a negative cash flow situation. And so making sure that you're again, managing, sending out the invoices and following up and getting the money in your bank is so important. And, basically the top thing that you can do to keep yourself, above water and in a positive cash flow situation. Another thing that I see, a lot of times, again, like the scope creep on a job and not acting on change orders and basically, saying no to that scope creep. I know a lot of people struggle to say no, and they want to help them out, and they really, all the emotional reasons why you might want to, do something extra and go above and beyond out of that scope, but you just can't afford to do that. From a cash flow standpoint, you can't afford to order additional materials that the customer is not, covering. You can't afford to pay your guys an additional amount of time that you didn't have incorporated into the budget for that job. And so you've got to send change orders. And as soon as the customer agrees on a change order, you should immediately invoice them and collect on that. Change orders don't need to be spread out over time. They, you could if you really wanted to, but like the common practice is that change orders should be invoiced and collected, right away. So, again, do that. You got to do that. And it's so important that, you don't let scope creep come in here and end up taking your job profits and just dwindling them down, because that's what'll happen. And I just see people getting in that habit of not doing it. So like, just, you got to stop yourself. Again, I would love to help you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. However, I'm going to need to issue a change order. I can get you a great deal, again, helping them understand that this is going to require you, to adjust your schedule. You might have to push back other jobs. You're going to have to deploy more resources to go pick up those materials. You're going to have to put in the orders. Like, there are real costs above just the material and just the labor costs that are associated with a change order. So make sure that you are always issuing those change orders and collecting on them. I think another thing too is with poor contracts, you could get yourself into deep trouble and end up ultimately in litigation, where you're going to now have to spend even more money to, for lawyers and attorney fees and like everything else that comes along with that. So, making sure that you have established your best practices, and your contract terms, conditions, agreements, your payment schedules, all of that needs to be done up front and agreed upon at the forefront. And, by the way, we've got an awesome partner, the Cromings law firm that we're essentially about to be introducing directly into JobTread to help all of our customers make sure that they're getting rock solid contracts in place, that they're setting those expectations, that they're prepared for the worst case scenario. It's so important, and that will keep you out of litigation, that'll keep you out of trouble, and it'll protect your cash flow so that you're getting paid on time, on schedule, every time. Kind of moving past that, like thinking about the, on the vendor, billing side. Like I so many times I see people that, they just think because, the sub worked today, and then they're coming into the office and hitting you up that you need to write a check today to pay them. You don't. You can't pay immediately. Like, you need to figure out ways, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail here in a second, but like, you can't pay your bills immediately. You have to, leverage that payment term schedule with your vendors and your subs, because that buys you more time to collect cash from the customer, to use that cash to pay out on your bills and all the expenses related to that job. So, again, making sure you're not paying too early is a great strategy to, again, make sure you're positive cash flow on every job. And also just failing to manage your job costs. Like, you can't fly blind. If you're selling construction projects and construction jobs, like, you need to understand what your job costs are going into a job, like figuring out the budget for the job and making sure that you take that, you have an approved cost budget, and then you're managing and tracking all of those costs that you're committing out along the way. That's going to help you from accidentally overrunning your budget. That's going to help make sure that you know what you can spend and don't overspend on that. And if you do overspend, you need to understand why, so that you don't make that same mistake twice. So job costing is super important. It's a technique that will, again, help you maintain that positive cash flow. It takes a little more effort, but I can tell you it's so worth it to make sure that you're managing all of your costs along the way. Kind of moving beyond even a job, lack of sales. So, obviously if you win a big job and you go and you focus all of your time and effort on that job, that's great. But like, you have to think about also, what's going to happen after that job. So you do need to always keep, a focus on sales and keeping that pipeline full and having those jobs teed up so that after today's job's completed, you've got the next job to move on to. Keeping the sales pipeline full, and it's so important that from a month to month, it's going to help you have a more clean kind of even cash flow across the entire year, instead of having just huge kind of dips up and down in a certain month when you got a job. You want to keep that pipeline full so that, again, that positive cash flow can be coming in. Just really important. And then, more so from like an overhead standpoint, like, you got to control your overhead. You got to control your cost, everything, that's outside of, a specific job. You got to make sure that you can afford to keep the lights on, and that you're not, just too much investment spending, whether it's, in your office and vehicles and, hiring too many people. Like, all of that costs money, and you have to make sure that you're investing in the business, but doing it at the right pace so that you can afford it within your cash flow. You don't want to end up getting into a situation where, you think today you can afford it, but, again, maybe in 3 months or 6 months, you totally can't afford it. And now you got money just flying out the door, and you don't have enough coming in to cover it. So really, thinking through the future and not just making decisions based on today, but for the entire year and for your bigger plan. That's, again, it's why forecasting and kind of looking at cash flow statements can help you to make sure that you can afford those investments in that overhead to grow the business. So we're going to dive into some of these a little bit more here. Again, collecting faster. At the end of the day, like the thing you've got to do with your customers, you have to have very clear, payment terms. Having an established payment, schedule for every single job is so important. And again, that comes back to, including that on the contract. When you're sending out your proposals, your terms, conditions, contracts, like, set the expectation up front that you're going to need an upfront deposit in order to start the job, to get them on the schedule, and then having that throughout, that you're going to add certain milestones, whether it be based on, a certain number every couple of weeks, whether it's every week, whether it's, every phase of the project. If you're doing a new build, it might be kind of, at the very beginning, and then, when you kind of get, complete the demo and you're moving into the, pouring the foundation or getting into the framing, at certain milestones, you might have big upfront cost for the material required at that stage. And so, having that schedule of draws that you need to be able to collect along the way, that's so important, because it's not going to shock the customer when you reach that stage. And then, you send them that invoice and you have that expectation that they're going to pay that right away so that you can continue the work. I hear sometimes, people might want to do kind of a straight percentage of the job up front, maybe it's 20%, 30%, 50%, whatever it is. I think you should always strive to do that. Now, some people, and again, depends on the type of work, the size of the job. Some customers might not feel comfortable prepaying for labor because, maybe, they're worried that you won't show up or something like that and just run off with their money. But with the material, I mean, they know that, like, you're going to have to purchase that material in order to be able to send the laborers out to actually start doing the job. And, sometimes that material can even be delivered directly to the job site. So at least with that upfront money for the material, if they're not comfortable paying for the labor, fine, at least get it for that material. And again, the material can be on the job site at their property. So, again, they've paid for it. They feel more comfortable that it's there, but, like, you shouldn't be fronting the money for the jobs. Like, assuming it's, a decent size scale, like, maybe a small little, repair or small remodel where it's not much upfront cost, fine. But, like, on these bigger jobs, like, you don't want to get yourself into a situation where, it's a habit to front the money up front, because all it takes is one time with one customer where you get stiffed and you're left, you've already spent the money, you're out that money and you can't get it back. And so that's why it's so important to collect up front, make sure that that customer has the means to pay you, and this kind of leads into that next point. Like, you got to give your customers multiple means to pay, whether it's cash, sure, take cash if you want, checks, ACH, credit cards, whatever it is, make sure that you have a working payment method with that customer and establish that at the very beginning. How are you going to get paid? Do not wait to the end of the job, invoice for 100% to realize that they don't actually have any money. They can't afford it. Whatever it may be, like, don't put yourself in that situation, because I've seen it happen so many times. And now, I mean, your only option is to go, and hire a lawyer and try to, fight them. And again, the time is money. You're paying out more money now just to recoup the money that they owe you, that you're not getting paid. It's a huge distraction. So you can mitigate your risk by collecting on that payment schedule. And you got to be aggressive, like collect, follow up. Don't just send an invoice and leave it out there and just not make them pay. Like, no, they need to pay, and if they don't pay, you've got to stop work. That's your leverage. If you just keep doing the job and they never make any payments until the very end, what do you think is going to happen on that final payment? Like, it's so important that, you do that. And that's where, again, these draw schedules, progress invoices, they're a great mechanism to do that. And you're not having to, kind of put the entire massive, cost to the customer on them in one payment. You're letting them spread it out over time, which will also be helpful for them, because again, I mean, most people, they get paid, every couple of weeks or once a month or whatever. And so from a cash flow standpoint for them, it's going to help them be able to make those payments over time and not have to worry about how good are they at managing finances and did they set aside the money to pay you at the end. We want to collect it along the way. Sometimes I've seen people even offer an early payment incentive. You could do that if you really, need the money, or you want to give that incentive to people, maybe just a small little discount for prepaying the entire job up front. That could be one thing, but even having late fees, if they don't pay you, again, you need a mechanism, as much as you can kind of have, as many tools in your arsenal as you can have to make sure that you're going to get paid. You want to incorporate that on the forefront and then follow through with that when you get into these challenging situations. But just don't wait till the end for that to happen. So moving to kind of the other side, about your accounts payable, your AP, paying your vendors, your subs, suppliers. It's so important, again, that you have established your payment terms up front. And I can't tell you and emphasize enough, like, whatever those terms are right now with your suppliers, renegotiate every couple months, once a quarter, twice a year, whatever it may be. Constantly keep asking for better terms. Ask them, if you're on a net 30 right now, ask for net 45. If you're on net 40, ask for net 60. If you've got, kind of $10,000, credit line with them, ask for an increase. Like, whatever you can do to improve your terms for your advantage, you should do that. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. No harm, no foul. But at the end of the day, if you can improve your payment terms, if you can pay slower, that gives you more time to collect from the customer, and you can then directly use that cost so that you don't go into an overdue situation where now you're paying fees, because you haven't paid your bills on time. It's just always try to make sure you've got the best terms with those suppliers. Same thing with your subcontractors. Like I talked about it earlier, but like, you can't you can't just pay them immediately. The goal is to keep them busy. And so that every week, every other week, they're getting something, but it's for a job that they may have completed, 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's just so important that, like, you can hold and make sure that job got completed satisfactory to the customer. Again, gives you more time to collect money from the customer. And if the customer does come back with a quality, issue or something, they got a punch list of items that, weren't completed, that need to be completed, you've got leverage with that sub and to send them back out to the job to complete those remaining tasks before you pay them that final amount. If you don't do that and they've essentially already been paid everything, then sometimes it can be a tricky situation to try to get them to go back out there, especially if they're not, one of your regular guys that you keep, busy most of the time. You're obviously going to have a better relationship with them, but for subs that you might not, use that frequently, like if you've already paid them out 100%, believe me, they're going to come back to you with a change order and they're going to want more money, and that's not in your budget. So, to the best of your ability, establishing those payment terms with your subs, where you can hold some sort of a percentage, until everything has been signed off on. A lot of times I do see, paid on paid, so the sub might not get paid until you get paid. that can work, but that can also be a challenging thing to keep those subs loyal to you, because if they're unsure how quickly you're going to get paid, it's harder for them, to pay their guys. And so I do think that some sort of a payment schedule, so they're getting paid along the way, will also be better in the long run and create more loyal, workers for you. But in the event that looks like you're not getting paid, I mean, at the end of the day, like if it's the difference between your business going under and the sub not getting paid for an extra couple of weeks, obviously, like, you don't want to miss payroll, you don't want to not be able to keep the lights on at your office. And so having some sort of a mechanism to delay payments when need be, it's tremendously important for you. Also making sure that you're when you do receive bills from your subs, does that bill match the work order that you issued to them? Like, make sure that you're not being double billed, or that you're not being overcharged. So many times, like, and again, whether it was on accident or it was on purpose, I don't know, but like when I ran the GC, I saw that happen time and time again. It was the workers, kind of spouse or partner back in at the house who was doing all the invoicing, may not have had clear communication between the sub and the person who generated the invoice. Maybe if an invoice didn't get paid, they send another one. Well, sometimes that got entered into our system and we would double pay, and like, it's because we weren't organized and doing the job costing and using work orders and purchase orders. And believe me, as soon as we implemented that in the GC, like, that all stopped. We could immediately catch those errors before it was too late. It's super hard. Like, when you tell someone, hey, I overpaid you, and now I'm going to have to take it out of your next paycheck. Boy, that is a tough situation. Now, you may need to do it, but try not to get into that situation. Whatever you've committed to them with a work order, a contract, purchase order, like, that's what you should expect to pay them. And if anything is different, then they should have gotten a change order from you. You need to, like, understand why, make sure it's right. Don't just blindly pay your bills. You have to make sure that that was what you expected and what you had baked into your job cost. And then, just kind of one little note here on rating, your vendors. I think this is important for both your subs and suppliers. Like, just keeping a quality check on how are they performing for you. Are you running into reliability issues, quality issues? Are they showing up on time? Are they, is the communication good? Or, how's the communication? Are they communicating with the customer and creating confusion? Or are they very polite? And, like, keeping track of that, that qualitative, as well as the quantitative issues. If they're overbilling, double billing, things aren't matching up, it can be easy to kind of just, oh yeah, that happened one time, and then not really document it. And then, oh, it kind of happened again. And like, you need to make sure that you're documenting that so that you understand and have a very quantitative, metric that over time you can essentially say, hey, it just doesn't appear to be working out very well, with this particular sub or with this particular supplier. And that tells you that you may need to go and find other alternatives instead of just continuing to do the same thing. Keeping that information. And I mean, like in JobTread, it's as simple as adding a custom field, a rating. Maybe it's a 5-star system, and as issues come up, documenting that, and at some point decrementing the number of stars that they've got, so that you just have record of it, so that if you got multiple project managers working with them, again, setting that process up to just making sure that, like, each and every one of your subs and suppliers, you've got a good working relationship that leads to, that positive cash flow. It's very important. So, just kind of think through all that and how you might be able to implement that. A little bit higher level, managing your jobs more profitably. So, I've said this on other webinars, it's the JobTread approach is, determine and know your numbers, know what your job is going to cost you before you send out that proposal and before you agree on a price. Like, you've got to do the budget and build it out and put in all of your costs, put all of your contingencies, think through, those worst case scenarios, and make sure that you're accounting for all of your costs. You don't want to have to surprise your customer later with change orders. You don't want to have upset, subs and suppliers when you can't afford, and you don't have what that cost is in the budget. Now you're eating out of your profit. Like, build accurate budgets going into every single job, and that will help you to price those jobs accurately. That's how you can leverage the cost that you have established in your target profit margin. That's how you can essentially calculate the price so that if everything goes smoothly, that you're going to hit that target profit margin, that you're going to earn what you need to earn to keep growing and funding the business. And that profit needs to be based on your overhead and what the difficulty of the job, and there's so many different factors, the size of the job, so it doesn't have to be a one size fits all for every single job, but take all that into account and make sure that you're charging enough for your job so that you're going to accurately, or so that you're going to generate that profit that you need to make this job worthwhile. If you're not going to make enough money on this, what's the point? You got to make sure that you're charging enough, whether it's, 40, 50% profit margins, if you got larger jobs, if you're doing new home builds, maybe it's more than 30, 25%, but don't work for free, guys. You can't afford to do that. It's just going to get you in hot water later. And especially if you keep growing and scaling your business, working for too little, then, it's going to come crashing down at some point. So make sure you're charging enough. And then when you do win those jobs, I've talked about this some already, but job costing is so important. It is worth the investment in that extra time to make sure that you're tracking your cost in real time. That's how you're going to discover that you're having cost overruns, and then when you see that, for whether it's a material or it's for labor or equipment rental or whatever it may be, you're going to be able to see where you're overrunning your budget, and hopefully you can course correct. Issue those change orders, make sure that you've got in your contract the ability to issue change orders when unforeseen circumstances come about. Don't just eat that cost. That will come right out of your pocket. You've got to issue those change orders and course correct when you can. Obviously, if it was an estimation error, it was you had your numbers wrong, update your catalog, update your numbers. Don't keep making the same mistakes twice. Every single job, you need to analyze and understand where you lost money and why, so that you don't make those same, those same mistakes over and over again. Look for those patterns and try to, identify those. And ultimately you can start analyzing, if certain types of jobs are, you're not able to perform and hit that target margin, or maybe it's, the size of the job. If it gets too large, it becomes an issue for you, or even the small jobs, you just can't make it work. It's just not worth, sending out the guys for that stuff. Understanding, what you are best at and making sure that you're hitting that target profit so that you can go and do more of the things that you're making the money that you need to make, and less of the things that you're not hitting that target margin. It's so important. And that's going to help you build a much healthier, scalable business and be able to, again, fund the business and fund the projects when you're doing the things that are working well and fixing the things that aren't. So one more note on this. It's the job costing, leveraging purchase orders and work orders. It's so important. I know, when you're small, single owner operators, maybe also doing some of the work out in the job site, they feel like it's more work, it's extra work, they don't have the time for it. But at the end of the day, that's how you protect your budget. That's how you protect your profit, is by, having that agreement in place with your suppliers, equipment providers. You have to use purchase orders and work orders, with your subs. You definitely need to have a master subcontract in place, an agreement with that sub that every time you use them, this is the expectations. This is how you're going to get paid. These are the things that you need to deliver on. This is when you're expected to show up. Having that in place. And again, if you don't have that, we have a phenomenal partner. The Cromings Law Firm can help produce a custom specific contract for your company based on the type of work you're doing. You got to have that in place to protect yourself. It's about mitigating your risk. And, even more than that too, though, when you're sending out, outlaying those costs, and you're committing out of your approved budget, you're committing money to different companies to deliver materials, to deliver services, to do the work. That's going to help you see early on where you're overrunning that budget. It's going to help prevent you from overspending. And look, some situations you might get into where you don't have the budget that the sub or the supplier is asking for or needing to, and it gives you that insight to negotiate with that sub. Tell them, hey, I've only got X in this job. I understand if you can't do it, but I'm going to have to go find somebody else. Are you sure you can't do it, or you don't want the work? Believe me, more often than not, they'll work with you. If you just, for whatever the situation is, help them understand this is what you've got in it for them, and you got to get it done at that rate. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to fund the project. And, at the end of the day, everyone's going to lose if the project doesn't get done and doesn't get done, profitably. It could, risk to the business as a whole. And so negotiate and just have that insight into what is in your budget, what you have to spend for every single task. It gives you that clear indication of where you're at, what your projected profitability will be. It helps you not to overspend money that you don't have. And then, I already touched on this earlier, but when you get in your bills, make sure that they match what you committed to them. And that's how you can just immediately address those issues. It's just going to save you money in the long run. It's just a habit that you need to get into, and it's how you can better scale and manage that cash flow for your business. So closing out your jobs, this is also a really important, it's a habit that you need to get into. Again, it needs to happen as fast as possible as well. Managing that final punch list, address all of the issues, making sure that you're doing that final walk with the customer, figure out, are they satisfied? Are there issues? And if you can do these things along the way and not wait till the end, that's even better, so that you're collecting and understanding what that final punch list is going to do. That's going to help you keep in close communication with the sub, so that they know that they're going to need to take care of these issues, whether it's, keep going on the current phase, but you're going to have to circle back, or this is going to have to be done at the end. As early on as you can flush that out, the better. And so, just by doing that early, it's going to help you speed up that closeout process. But at the end of every job, you got to go through this process, and the more that you can, again, kind of streamline that process, all the admin work by, storing all the documentation in one place, having those contracts, having all of the, the inspections, the all of the documentation, the photos, the before, the during, the after, having that organized in one place already, and not trying to scramble at the end of the job to collect it and get it off, all the photos from people's phones and wherever it may be emailed or dropped to or whatever, throughout the job. Keep that information organized, so that when you're ready to come in and do that final walkthrough and close out that job, you're going to have already had it all documented. I'm also a huge proponent of collecting a final signature from the customer. With JobTread, you can send a final sign off. As a customer order, it doesn't have to have any, any line items or anything on it. Just, again, little blurb saying, hey, that they agree that this job has been completed, and they can sign it. Again, it just gives you that leverage later. If for whatever reason you're not getting paid, or you have some issue, you've collected that documentation. It's all organized in one place, and you can show the before, the during, the after to defend yourself if you need. Hopefully we don't get into that situation, but you want to always prepare for the worst case. So keeping it all together. And then lastly, again, doing the job performance review, analyze, did we estimate this job correctly? Were we accurate? When I ran the GC, I studied all of the historical data that we had, and I found that there were two main reasons why we didn't hit our target profit margin. We either misbid the job, or we misran the job. And so this gives you that opportunity, and whether you do it, at the end of every week, every other week, once a month, whatever it is, I think it's very important to do it as close, to the end of the job as you can, because that's when it's fresh on everyone's mind. But that's going to also help you identify if you're misbidding the jobs, then you need to make those corrections so that you don't keep doing that. And if you're misexecuting on the jobs, why, what happened, and again, if you wait, a month or weeks to do this closeout and have this discussion with the project managers, then it's going to be that much harder to figure that out and to really pinpoint where you got off track. So doing that is very important. And again, like I said earlier, were there any issues that arose with your subs, with your suppliers? Did the suppliers deliver the materials when they said that they're going to be delivered? Did we have all the materials? Was there a quality issue with the materials? Did the subs show up? Did they work full days? Were there ever issues there? Whatever it may be, again, reflecting on that and coming up with a way to track that is super important. And it's going to help you to better scale your business and make sure that you are delivering quality products and services to your customers every single time. And ultimately, when you deliver a quality product, you're much more likely to get paid, right? If you're doing shoddy work, your chances of getting paid are going to be less. And so, this is going to help you continue improving that kind of all around from improving your numbers and your profitability to the quality, the satisfaction, creating raving customers that'll give you reviews and testimonials and be references for you. It's so important. Project timeline too. I mean, did you complete the project on time? If not, why? What happened? I mean, if it's weather, okay, that's one thing. But like, if there were issues that were because of someone's failures, then you need to understand and identify that and just keep track of that. And that's again where daily logs can really be helpful here as you run that job. Collect all that information along the way so that you're not just having to try to remember. As these jobs get into the weeks and into the months, like it can be very hard. So documenting all of those weather issues, all of those job site issues, safety issues, whatever it is, like keeping that updated and collecting that along the way is super helpful so that you can speed up that closeout period. And ultimately, you can get paid everything you're owed, and you can pay out what you need to, and you'll have a very clean, successful job there. So I just want to touch for a second on overhead. This again is super important that, so what is overhead? It's all the administrative expenses your business, incurs that aren't directly related to specific projects. For a project, we've got our sales or our revenue, and then we've got our cost of goods sold, which is everything that it costs us to actually deliver that product or service. Then you've got your gross profit. And then everything below your gross profit, so it's not directly related to a job cost, that's your overhead. It could be your rent, your utilities, your office staff, your salary, all of those, other expenses that it takes to operate your business. That's your overhead. And so it's so important though that like you got to start small. You got to be very, very cost conscious, conservative with your cash. Like always be looking for ways to reduce your cost. If there are inefficiencies, like find out how you can be more inefficient. Do not just keep hiring and throwing bodies at, inefficient processes. That is going to lead to huge waste. It's going to blow through all of your cash. Your monthly burn is just going to be astronomical, and it's just not directly related to a project that you're getting paid for with your margin on top. And so, this is one thing that can, again, very quickly sink a company is if you overhire, you overinvest. It can just lead to a tremendous cash flow issue where no matter what you do, you're negative cash flow, you're losing money every single month. And at some point, it's going to outrun all of the cash that you've got in the bank. You're going to have to go borrow money. Like sometimes it makes sense to do that. But like, again, to the extent that you can just be as conservative and as cost conscious as possible, it's just kind of my approach. Just don't waste money. You just can't afford to do it. And one technique though that I have seen that's been really interesting, some of our larger builders on JobTread, what I've seen them starting to do is directly in their job budgets, they're actually incorporating their overhead cost into the jobs. So at the bottom of that job, instead of it being, a gross profit, it's their net profit. It's that net after all of their overhead. And I think that's a great strategy. And the way they're doing it is that they're essentially figuring out what are the total overhead cost for the entire year. Project that out. What is it going to cost you to keep the lights on, to pay all of your employees, to pay all your bills, everything, like, again, outside of a job? What is that number for the whole year? And then take that number divided by the number of working days. So how many days are you going to work that year? Most people probably don't work Saturday, Sunday. I think it's around 250 working business days out of the 365 days a year. So take your total overhead divided by the number of working days, and that gives you a cost to operate your business per day. And so you can take that number and you can directly add a line item in your budget for how many days do you project this job to take you times that cost to operate the business. And that's your cost. And I even see these guys putting margin on top of it, which is awesome. And so that way they're now incorporating their overhead into that job. And so at the end of the day, like, that's another great strategy to increase, your price of that project. Now the reality is though, if you're charging 50%, gross profit margin, well, your net profit margin is not going to be nearly as high, but it does incorporate all of that overhead costs. And so it helps make sure that you're accounting for all of that overhead so that you can keep, investment spending and you can keep running those jobs. I'd say it's a more advanced strategy. So I don't think you have to necessarily, if that kind of was way, kind of over your head, you don't have to start with that, but it is something to think through, because it can be another great strategy to manage your cash flow and directly tie it to your jobs and to that, to the cash flow coming in from your jobs, to make sure that you can cover that, all of your cost. Now, lastly, I've touched on this, and it is something that I want to caution you. So, again, there are lots of ways that you can take, and get funding for your business. But before we go into that, like, I want to make sure to reiterate, like, collect on your AR. Like, do not go borrow money because you're not getting paid. Focus on getting paid. Collect your AR every single time. Don't let that sit out there and linger. Like, just collect it, somebody. And that is the most important thing you can do. If you have already earned money, there's nothing more important that you can do than make sure you get paid for that. Now, with that being said, again, if you got an awesome business, things are going great, you're looking to scale it, you've got a good handle on your cash flow, on your business, like, that's awesome. And so there can be, it is a strategy to basically continue to fuel the business with, capital, that you can essentially borrow. And this can be to support your working capital needs. It could be to purchase, equipment or machineries or vehicles or whatever you may need. It can cover your expenses, during slow times. If you got a cyclical business where, certain things you can't do in the winter, maybe, again, this can just kind of help give you that cushion. It's something that, is a strategy. We do have an awesome new partner, for a financial, who essentially will allow anyone to, to request funding. They'll loan you anywhere from $5 to $1 million. So it is an opportunity there. Now, they're going to want to see that you've been in business for at least 6 months. I think you need to be doing at least like 12,000, in sales every month. And there, maybe a couple other criteria there, but like, it can be a strategy to make sure, that you can continue fueling your growth, and, you're able to win, bigger jobs. But I want to caution you, be careful, because again, cash flow is the number one reason why businesses fail. And it's not, I've seen it time and time again. Too much cash can be the issue too, because it leads you to make poor spending decisions. It leads you to overinvest and overhire and overspend, which at the end of the day, like any investment spending you do in your business, you have to figure out and make sure that you're going to be able to cover that from your jobs, and make sure that you're pricing those jobs high enough so that you're taking that profit and covering your overhead and still making money and putting money in your pocket. Because otherwise, what's the point? I don't want you to get into a situation where, you've borrowed too much money, and now you're just digging yourself into a hole deeper. It's not the goal here. So you got to be smart, and definitely talk to, professional, capital advisors, professionals who can help you, make sure that you are set up and that you will be able to manage that additional cash so that you can repay it. And if you can, the cost of capital is, is fairly cheap these days. So it is something to consider if that's going to help take you, to the next level. And it's going to allow you to invest in, key resources, invest in marketing that's going to have an ROI. Like, just make sure that every dollar you spend, you've got a plan to recoup that, and that you will be able to pay that off. Otherwise, again, you're opening up, a whole world of cash flow trouble that could get you in trouble. And I don't want to see that happen. I would rather you grow slower and more methodically than to just try to grow as fast as possible and throw a bunch of money down and think that you're going to get all these deals and make all this money, because that's often not how it happens. It takes time to grow a business, and you need to do it smartly and make sure that you're managing that cash so that you will be around in, 2, 3, 5 years from now. And so I definitely wanted to make this resource available to you. We're about to roll out a marketplace and job share that you'll actually be able to directly apply for that financing. But, again, if you got any questions or concerns about this, definitely do reach out to us. Happy to kind of help talk through that. I know the people at 4 are also very knowledgeable. That's why we've selected them as a partner. So just again, be smart about it and really make sure that you know what you're doing. If you got a bookkeeper, accountant, just bring them to the table and really think through this so that you can make sure that you can scale your business and not get into trouble. So, it's kind of my spiel there on cash flow. I want to, reiterate, that JobTread is a tool. It's a construction management system to help you with budgeting your jobs, estimating, pricing, just kind of everything from kind of the sales to, the job operations, the project management, scheduling, all those purchase orders, the job costing, the time, the daily logs, all of that is right here in JobTread. And then, obviously collecting, those invoices, managing those vendor bills. We've got an awesome product. The software tool built out specifically for construction businesses to help you better grow, your business, to stay organized on your jobs, to do that job costing, and ultimately to be able to increase your profits so that you keep growing and scaling the business. So I'd definitely love to, if you're not using JobTread already, please do check us out. Like I said, we've got some awesome partners here, and we're going to be continuing to look for, and finding the best partners and resources that we can provide you to help you build your business in the best way. Cromings, as I mentioned, would be happy to make an introduction to them, for financial, decorators. If you're a deck builder, we've got some great tools in there to help you, build out those jobs and understand your budgets. So, please do reach out. We'd love to get you connected with our partners as well. And at the end of the day, though, let's figure out how we can help you get going with JobTread. If you're not currently using it, we'd love to continue this conversation to help you get organized, increase your profits. We've got a great tool, and we're here. You can go to our website, www.jobtread.com/demo, or just hit the schedule a demo link up at the top of the website. We would be happy to spend time walking you through JobTread and helping you understand how you can implement it for your business and how this will help you become a more successful business. So we'd be happy to spend the time to show you that and make sure it's going to be a good fit for you. Just reach out to us on our website, and we look forward to connecting then. Got a couple more webinars coming up. This is, in September, we've got a few. We've also got some more that we're going to be adding, but, be sure to check out jobtread.com/webinars. That's on our front end website, or, if you're already using JobTread, directly in the help desk, you can see all the upcoming events right there. And again, like I said earlier, if you got ideas, topics, things that, you're struggling with for your business, we would be happy to put together additional webinars and content that, we think could help you overcome those challenges. We're in a really unique spot where we get to see, hundreds of businesses and how they're operating. We see the successes and we see the challenges. And so, we want to continually providing you that, that education and that professional development so that you can learn, from others and become the best business that you can. So I appreciate you coming out to today's webinar. And I hope you, picked up a couple tips and tricks here and have a better understanding now of your cash flow. And look forward to connecting after this. Again, if you're not with JobTread, you could schedule a demo. If you're already with JobTread, you've got all of our contact information. Would be happy to discuss any of this in more detail with anyone. But appreciate you coming today, and we look forward to seeing you at upcoming events and webinars. Thank you.